Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I do hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video. This video's on the Vleocity 1 trim wheel. As you can see here, let's just jump in the aircraft, release our parking brake and take off. In this video I'm going to be showing you and talking about the issues with the Vleocity 1 flight stick and yoke trim wheels. I'm going to show you a couple of workarounds, a workaround for me and a different solution by a different person that I've come across, and actually talk about what the issues are with the trim wheels, what's causing it. Let's just take off here, and I'm just going to use my trim wheel, and as you can see it's just gone over to 36% trim just as I touched the trim wheel. So as I said, in this video I'm going to talk about my workarounds for this and the issue surrounding the Vleocity 1 trim wheels. Okay, let's not dilly-dally. Let's get on with this video. Okay, so I'm flying around London in the Cessna 172 on autopilot. And, as you can see, I'm flying around lovely old, crumpled old London. Does look stunning sometimes, and other times not. Anyway, let me show you what the issues are with the trim wheel. This is officially from James at TBS. James is the moderator of the Turtle Beach Discord, which I'll link down below in the description. If you've got any issues with your Turtle Beach products, Turtle Beach Discord is the place you should reach out to first. Let's just jump to James' answer there. Hi James, yes, it's something that's inherent to the flight sim. The autopilot modifies the trim variable inside the sim when the autopilot is on, and of course adjusts the value as needed in flight. When the autopilot is disconnected or the Vleocity 1 flight stick trim wheel is moved, the absolute value that the physical trim wheel has been set to is sensed by Microsoft Flight Sim, so the trim variable snaps to that value. Something you can actually practice in the sim yourself. Let's just take the comment off screen for the moment. Take off. Under manual control, set your trim to something like 30%, something extreme. Go to your menu, restart, take off again. As you move your trim wheel when you take off, you're going to see it's going to snap back, or it should do, to that 30%, the old value. Takes a while to get your head around it, but it does make sense. Let's just bring that comment back up on screen. It's something we'd obviously like to change, but due to the nature of how the whole Microsoft Flight Sim peripheral system works, without a driven trim wheel like in a real aircraft that actively monitors and matches the value in the sim constantly during flight when autopilot is on, it's a fairly complex situation to address. It's still on our radar and we're continuing to look into it, and we'll let you know if progress is made. So there you go, chaps. That's an explanation, a good explanation of what the issue is. Not a Turtle Beach problem, it's more a problem that's inherent to the sim. You're going to find pretty much any trim wheel, unless it's a real trim wheel, that's on an axis will behave the same way. Okay, so with that discussed, let me now take you to a workaround that I use. Then I'll take you to a more concrete workaround for the trim issues. So let's show you my simple workaround for the trim wheel when it desyncs and goes to your sort of last trim setting. So again, I'm just in the Cessna 172 here, taxiing to take off. Let's just bring in the camera. There we go. So you can see my Vleocity 1 flight stick. And we'll take off. And there you go. I'll just touch the trim wheel. It's gone up. What I do just immediately, I tend to trim up when I first touch the trim wheel, and then I'll just trim the other way. Just takes a second or two. It's just like, I guess for me, it's just like looking at it like it's a defective trim wheel. And when you first take off, or take it off autopilot, and it's going to snap back to that value that it was at the trim, as you can see there in the bottom right. You can either make a mental note of it, what your trim was on, before you set autopilot, or before you take off from your last flight or whatever, and then trim. It's not a massive issue, as you can see. I'm pretty much back into straight on level flight there at the moment, roughly. I'm able to trim down and get my aircraft back to where it was. So if it does go wild, say for example it's going straight up like that, or straight down, just trim in the opposite direction immediately. Works on both the flight stick and the yoke. Not ideal, of course, and it would be good if this was addressed more by a Asobo at this point. They'll have to patch that in for trim wheels that use an axis. So there you go, that's one solution. Like I said, that's not ideal, so let's show you a more solid solution. And that, again, is not completely ideal for these types of trim wheels, especially when you compare them to axis. But let's take you to that part now. So let's show you a more solid workaround for this trim wheel issues. I'm in options and control options, so go there. I've got my Vleocity 1 flight stick set up on my overdrive settings. I'll link my Vleocity 1 playlist down below in the description. Go and look at that video on that overdrive setting for the Vleocity 1 flight stick. If you haven't already, it's quite interesting. Let's get on with this video. Flight control services, control trimming services here. So flight control services, control trimming services. As usual, it's set up on an axis, the trim. First thing I'm going to do is go open my preset manager down below. Open that. Going to duplicate with this button. Work on Xbox and PC. This, by the way, duplicate the profile. Because I'm going to keep that profile. I just want to make a new one for digital trim. Digital trim. And OK. So I've got my new profile set up. You also, on the Vleocity 1 flight stick, let me show you a video on screen. You want, using the dial on the bottom of the flight stick, go to the trim wheel settings menu. It's showing you on screen there. Click into that with the dial. On response, I believe it's there. I believe it is, rather. You want to change it from an axis, an analog axis, to digital buttons, or the digital select there. Showing it on screen so you can follow that step by step. And once you've done that, your flight stick is set up for digital trim buttons. Okay, so let's get back to this. So once you've got that set up on the flight stick, go to your control trimming services, click in this box here, where the trim's set up on an axis. So click in here. Work on Xbox and PC, like I mentioned. Clear current input. So we're going to clear that. We're going to validate and apply and save. Now you can see we've got no trim settings set up on our flight stick. I'm going to put the filter down here to all. So filter to all. Showing us all the possible settings. On open, just open your control trimming services. It still should be open if you're following this. You want to find elevator trim nose up and elevator trim nose down. Click in the trim nose up. And remember, to trim up, you want to be moving your trim wheel down. So I'm going to click into start scanning. Move my trim wheel down. And it should come up button 14 like it has. It should be exactly the same on the Xbox. Validate. And trim nose down. I'm going to do the same here. Elevator trim nose down. Click in this box. Click in start scanning. In this case, I'm moving my trim wheel up. There you go. Button 13. Validate. And apply and save. Now you've got your trim wheel set up. If we collapse all them, open the collapse. Open collapse. Put the filter onto assigned. Go to flight control services. Control trimming services. You've now got your trim settings set up by buttons. If it doesn't do that automatically, just click in the box. Instead of clicking in this box, you can select an input and then scroll down to you see button 14 here for trim nose up, for example, and button 13. Let's just choose it. Doesn't matter, I've got it set up anyway, and button 13 for trim nose down on both the Xbox and PC. Now we've got those settings set up, let me show you how this operates in the sim. Okay, so with those settings applied, let me just throttle up, and I'll bring in the video of my trim wheel. on my Vleocity 1 flight stick. So just got those settings applied on the flight stick. I'm in digital for the trim wheel, and I've got buttons essentially set up, the 2 buttons, trim nose up and trim nose down, on the flight stick. Let's just take off. And there you go, just keep an eye on that trim indicator at the bottom right there off the screen. I'll actually show you how to get those settings up, just a reminder, just in case you want to test this yourself. But there you go, just using the trim wheel. It's not as good, not as fluid as having it as an axis, but it is more accurate, so it's not going to sort of snap back off autopilot. Not that I've found. I had one issue when you first change it. You may find that it'll snap back like it behaves like an axis, but use it a couple of times and keep it in those settings. You're going to find whatever trim that you assign it to coming off autopilot, taking off, and you start trimming, it's going to behave like it should. Yeah, it just takes a little bit longer to find your trim. So let's trim for level flight there. And there we go, roughly level flight. Okay, let's just quickly show you. Let's just take the video off, and I'll quickly show you where you find control options. It's not in control options, it's going to be in options, assistant options, user experience. So options, assistant options, click on the user experience tab. I've showed this before. Just put your instrument heads-up display cockpit cam into minimal. You've only got minimal and well, let's just see, off. So put it into minimal, resume. You will now find that you've got things like, you can see what your trim set at, etc, etc. Let's just move trim down. I mean, it's usable in the digital format, and it does save your trim wheel going crazy when you move it. But let me know your thoughts on this issue. Once again, don't blame Turtle Beach on this. This does seem to be a sim issue, let's just say, rather than the controller issue. I hope they get to the bottom of it soon, because I do prefer using the trim wheels as an axis. On an axis, rather. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Give it a like if you've enjoyed it and it's been helpful to you. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you soon.